first off, it is the last day of Southern Fried Gaming Expo. How are you? Wake up, buddy. How are you? how are you enjoying Southern Fried this year?
No, it's great. I'm sorry, I fell asleep there for a moment. No, it's been great. People are great. Apparently, I've been in this hotel before, but I can't remember when. When I checked in, they said, "You've been here before," and I was like, "Okay." So,
I love it. My family, I have some family in Atlanta, and so they came and they played pinball yesterday and just had a blast. And I love all the different communities and the different rooms, and yeah, and plus the people. I mean, face it, you guys are the best.
It's been so cool. Like, I've been to gaming expos before, but this is the first one I've been to that had like all the arcade machines and the pinball machines. Like, there's been other things where they're mostly like selling vintage games and stuff, but not the level of actual games and all the card games and tabletop games. It's been so cool to see, and then to see so many people gathered here with such a common interest. It's been great.
It is. We always say it's like if the rest of the world was as cool as the community at a con, this world would be squared away. Like the collaboration and the joy and the innocence and delightfulness. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I introduced your characters a minute ago and the characters that you play in the Nintendo games, but how would you describe the character that you play in Nintendo games, or characters that you play in Nintendo games? Let's go down the line, Kenny. How do you...
I don't know. He's like a spoiled child. Maybe a bit misunderstood. Instead of going, he should be going. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like a dog chasing his tail. And I think if he ever caught it, he wouldn't know what to do with it. So, it goes on.
I think Peach is fierce, delightful, and innocent, and I love meeting girls who have loved Peach for a long time because having female role models that can be lovely and be sweet, but also be completely, oh, did I win? Just totally take you down. That's awesome. And Toad, I think Toad is sincere and loyal and highly excitable.
Yeah, I guess I would say I think of Rosalina as kind of benevolent and kind and motherly, but also really powerful and strong. Like that she's, yeah, I guess those are the words I'd say.
I will say, Sam, that's the reason I like to play Princess Peach in a Mario Party, is it's one of those, oh, did I win?
And then just leave everyone flat.
Do you ever, somebody's got to ask this, do you ever play the games to experience your characters, and do you play your own character, or do you like to play somebody else for a change when you're playing these games? Sam, if you're playing Mario Party, do you like to play Peach, or do you...
The only game that I've played a lot is Mario Kart, and I always play Peach with a bike, and I always win. On Rainbow Road! And so, yeah, no, I love to, and it makes it more real, because for us, you guys, we record in a studio that's closed, and there's no people, and there's a group, there's probably 8 people who are directing from Nintendo, but it almost doesn't seem real. And so when you actually play the games, that's where you go, oh, that really happened. And you can remember also, there's things that we did in recording. We record so many lines that we can't remember everything that we said. Even in the improv lines or whatever, to go, oh, that was real. Oh yeah, that's how that turned out. And to see when they put it all together, super magical. Yeah, they do such a great job. So I love it. I like when I'm racing Mario Kart and I'm making the same sounds that the character on the thing is making. That was me! Yay!
Kenny, Laura, you ever pick up Mario Kart or any of the games with the character?
I've been playing Odyssey, but I haven't finished it. I'm a lazy gamer. Sometimes I play a lot, sometimes I don't play at all for a long time. So still haven't finished Odyssey. But whenever I've played kart, it's always been Bowser. And I hate Rainbow Road.
It's really hard for you to win as Bowser.
Well, he needs things to bounce off of occasionally to keep him from, to keep him going straight.
Yeah.
So,
Don't we all?
but it's a hoot, to have your voice on something like that. And I remember the first time that I heard myself in a game title was in Strikers, and then not too long after that, it was Galaxy and Mario Kart Wii came out. And I was just blown away, especially with Galaxy, because you get to fight Bowser a lot. And so, it's like battle after battle after battle, and I was just all like giggling the whole time. I was like, oh, I actually did that? That's cool.
He seems to have a way of always coming back.
Yeah, and I know, come on, I've had people ask me about, how's it feel to be a character that gets beat all the time? And I was like, how many times did it take you going through and getting yourself beat before you figured the pattern out? I'm 20-1, So, and then they go on to the next level. But Bowser won, 20 times.
Okay, but confession time. How many of you are secretly cheering for Bowser sometimes? Okay, there's
Nope.
That's a lost cause.
We love you.
Take a step back a little bit, and Laura, I'll start with you on this question. I'd like to know a little bit about the journey, about how you got to being this character that you portray. Tell us a little bit about the journey, and maybe as a part of that, any research that you did on the character, anything you kind of did to prepare to take on this role.
Well, I think most people know I'm the third person to voice Rosalina, so there were two other people who did it before. I got the call from my agent to, audition for it, and the thing I remember about the audition process was, because I did an audition that I just recorded at home and I sent in, and then they said, okay, now they want to have you back for what's called a directed audition. So that means you're live in the booth, and then they're they can request things of you and ask you to try different things. And I was like, okay. So Nintendo's in Seattle, I was in Portland, so I went into a studio and I'm in the booth, and so they said, okay, we'll have you do a lot of what I had already done in the audition, and then they said, okay, now we're gonna have you do it like a cat. Because this was for Super Mario 3D World, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And they go, oh, nobody knows, but she turns into a cat in this game. I was like, oh, okay. So I was like, what do you want me to do? And they go, just do it like a cat. Well, I had been doing lines, I'd actually been saying words and stuff and made some sounds. So then I was like, so I'm looking at all the action in the script, and I'm making all these cat noises, going, and going at it for a while in the booth by myself, and I kind of did it for kind of what felt like an incredibly long time, and then ran out of ideas, and I stopped. And there was silence, and then all of a sudden they came on the mic and they went, oh, okay, thank you, good, okay, bye. And I was like, oh God, either that went really well or I just made a complete fool out of myself, and I had no idea, which it wasn't. I walked out of the booth and the engineer was sitting there, and I said, how do you think that went? And he went, oh, I was reading a magazine, I don't know, I wasn't paying attention. So then I just kind of went away and was like, I don't know. It's been, someone asked me well, how did the audition go? And I'm like, I couldn't even tell you. They either probably were laughing at me because they thought I was ridiculous, or that actually went really well. And then I ended up booking it. So I was just like, okay, I guess that went really well. So yeah, that's kind of how it came to be. And because it was already pre-existing, I had a blueprint for kind of who she was. It wasn't like I was creating a character from scratch. When I did Genshin Impact, the character existed in Japanese and Chinese already, but there was a lot of discussion with me and the people who developed the game. Let's talk about kind of what the voice we want to create for that. Where I was already working off a blueprint that was there.
Yeah, and same for me, because Jen Taylor did the voice before I did. I started in 2007, and I went in. I didn't know I hadn't played the games before. And so I did the audition, and they said, can you do this voice? And I could, and then can you do this voice? Yes, and then that was that. And then afterwards I went, oh, and I started playing the games, and I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then I think, it's such a collaborative thing, so they'll have directors and writers and people all in there, and they help us know, let's do this, but let's say that, Peach is mad, but she doesn't want anyone to know that she's mad. She's miffed. She's just slightly miffed. And how do you do that? And so we tweak it and do the nuance of a sound, and then it's really fun. It's a team sport. to come up with the characters. And I think over time, as Nintendo does more and more games, that these characters are evolving as they create, and we get to just come along for the ride. We never know, just for the record, we do not know when we get called in what they're gonna ask. Like she said, oh, be a cat. Oh, we didn't know you were gonna do that.
Like, didn't you say something like the Chef Toad thing?
Yeah, I did the voices for the Super Mario World at Universal, and they said there's this character we're gonna do, but we can't tell you because it's top secret, so we can't tell you what it is, but you're gonna voice it. And so I was so scared the night before, like, oh no, like I don't even have any ideas because I don't know what they're doing. And then I went in, and it was Chef Toad, and so we did a Toad that's a chef, and he talks, and so I was like, oh wow. This is great, you know, just thinking of every cooking show that I've ever watched and maybe give him a little bit of French, you know, I don't know. So we did it, but it's just like being willing to be foolish and try something and hope that it lands. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I'm here still.
Should I wake him up again, guys?
Yeah. With me, it was all kind of by remote control. I was just working my regular job. I had taken a class for voiceover stuff and had a demo made. And during the process of working one day, a customer asked if I was doing voice work. And I said, I'm trying to get started. And she was a part-time producer at Bad Animals in Seattle, which is the studio Nintendo records in. And they started sending me auditions, and they recast me from Scott Burns, who had it before me. So Super Mario Sunshine, that wasn't me, okay? That was the end of Scott's tenure, and then I took over after that. But my audition was all Scott's parts. So I did my very bestest Scott Burns and wound up getting that job. But I never had any callbacks from them, so.
Wow.
Yes, I sent them one audition, and then they sent me an email that said, you have the job. Thank you. That actually kind of surprised me, but, you know, because I fully expected to have to go and do something across the sound, but instead I had to go in there cold. And I had been in recording studios before, but for music. And I just went in there, I was all like, yeah, I know how to be a voice actor. I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I wound up kind of developing Bowser into a different sound. Not so much intentionally as it just worked out that way. Once I found out that they weren't going to have me speaking English, or at least in a very limited fashion, and that's mumbled. Once I figured that out, I was like, all right, I don't want to sound like Scott for the rest of my tenure in this position. So I started getting growlier and just trying to make it larger so that they would have even a larger bed to work with when they enlarge him audibly. Does that make sense? You know, so instead of going roar like Scott did, you know, I'm more of a roar. You know, it's a bit heavier. That's how I got going.
Am I the only one a little bit disappointed that Kenny didn't have to audition with Bowser as a cat? I have to hear this.
Yeah, no, they just, I had already been doing the characters since '05. And so 3D World was several years later.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So they just expected me to walk in there and just get slapped in the face with it. Because I did. I turned the page on the script and it said Meowser in quotations. And I did the same thing. I laughed. I was all like, that's hilarious. What does it mean? And they, you know, they said, well, it's a power-up. There's going to be a Cat Bowser and a Cat Peach and Cat Mario. And I was like, that's hilarious. What do you want him to sound like? And they go, click, we don't know. So I just had to wing it, you know, and she got to do little kitty cat sounds.
That's right.
You know, I had to
He had to give
growl.
up his throat for it.
You know, I had to go like, "Rawr," and then Bowserize it into, "Rawr, rawr," and all this screeching and, yeah, it tore me up.
That's the cat you
I
don't
was
get.
wounded.
Yeah. But was it worth it? Do you
Yeah,
guys think?
I thought it turned out good.
Yeah.
I thought it turned out good.
Well, and a lot of people, Kenny, you bring up a extremely valid point that a lot of people don't always think about with voice acting is that it can really take a toll on the voice, especially with some of these, specialty. Have you had a day where you were like, oh, this is just my voice is, I got a tea and honey for 3 days, after this? Is it pretty demanding most of the time?
Well, they like to split my sessions up to the maximum of 2 hours at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll be all like, all right, we're gonna have you in for 2 hours Monday morning and 2 hours on Tuesday morning and maybe 2 hours on Wednesday morning, depending on how things go. And so I'm all like, what am I gonna do the rest of the day? Go to Ivers, I guess. I don't know.
Well, and I mean, even doing something like this, like working at Comic-Con, like Kenny, you were
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
you've got like a session on Monday.
Yeah.
Like if you're talking a lot and doing the voice a lot and yelling in loud rooms, and then you go in to do sessions, like your voice sometimes is a lot deeper a day after you've been through a lot of strain, or if you had a session where you were doing like a Bowser and then you had to go, something you wouldn't have the register left anymore.
Yeah, and
Those situations.
I have a Crunchyroll session on Monday, so
He does animes.
I gotta do my my goat voice. It's Miyagi, but so hopefully that'll work out. I don't get home till almost midnight tonight, so that's gonna be
Knock
Oh,
on wood,
boy.
no delays or anything. Sam, and I'm going to go to audience questions after this. So if you have a really good question, raise your hand so Bobby can come on over and get your question. But Sam, I want to ask you this because you brought up this point that admittedly my mind in this convention has been like focused on the video games and games. But you brought up the Universal Park and Chef Toad. How is that to see these characters now exist in the real world?
Oh, it's so special. That was my joy, like to do that, because Peach got to speak sentences, and I love her. And I was like, she can talk. She's speaking lots of sentences, and that was really fun. And Chef Toad, I haven't gone. It was right in pandemic. Japan opened their park, and I was supposed to go, but it was pandemic, so we didn't go. And I'm gonna go to California, but I've been working a lot, so
When you
I'll go
come,
eventually.
I'll go with you, because I
Oh,
live
you
in
haven't gone?
California. I live 15 minutes from Universal and I have not been.
Okay, we'll go
Because
together.
it's just time. Yeah, we're gonna go together.
That would be a blast. And we'll
I
dress.
saw it on the
We'll wear our
YouTube.
gloves.
We'll get dressed up.
We'll wear our gowns and crowns and all that.
And people be like, who are these crazy ladies?
Yeah, but it is really special, and I think it's even more special to see kids' reactions, because, I mean, that's why we do it, is we like to make people happy, and to be here and to realize that it matters makes us really, really happy in our hearts. And so to see the videos of little girls talking with Peach, and Peach is answering her, and it's my voice, I mean, it makes my heart really joyful. So, yeah, I'm so glad that they did that.
How many of you all out there have been to the Nintendo world yet and gotten to interact with Princess Peach? Oh,
She's apparently giant, yeah. Hey guys, let's all dress up and let's go
Let's all
together.
go together, right?
California, Laura's place, come on.
Like I said, I saw it on the YouTubes. That's all I've seen of it.
All right, I think I saw some hands. Let's
Let's
check a couple questions here.
Here, start over here. I found the unmute button.
Oh,
Excellent.
nice.
I'm curious, how were you all directed voice-wise on doing the various sounds of the character? Were you asked to like do it in a certain way, or just come up with the best way you could?
Those are called like efforts, you know? Did you guys hear the question? Did anyone not hear the question? But yeah, that's such a fun thing to do in any kind of a game, is efforts, where when you see it, they call it like taking damage or efforts. So taking damage is when you're getting hurt, and it'll say like light damage, which is like you bump into a wall, it's like, ugh. But then there's like worse damage where you're like falling into hot lava and dying, you know, you gotta come up with that sound. And I think they're both like really interesting and fun, because you have to think so much about the specifics of, like, they'll say, and I know when I first did 3D World, they had like a mock-up video thing of the game, so you would watch it and they go, so you're gonna run and you're gonna jump and you're gonna land on the top of this flagpole and you're gonna spin around, like swing around on it, and then, you know, so what does that sound like? So it's, you're trying to come up with what would that be. And that's like a really fun creative thing to do that you don't always get to do. And jumping, there's like, okay, so I'm jumping. Am I jumping in place? Am I jumping from over the edge of a cliff onto something else? Am I jumping a high distance and falling? Like figuring all that kind of stuff out can be really fun. And then, like, I know when they were very collaborative with me when we were doing some of those things. Like, I remember there was falling into water, and you're supposed to say, oh no, and they're like, okay, this is a falling into water. There's like, oh no, like when something doesn't happen, but then this one was in water, so I had like a glass of water, and I remember going, oh no, like into the actual glass, and they used that, and it's just fun when those moments can come up.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other part too, that because you saw like when you're pretending that you took damage or you hit a wall, there's a physical thing you're just gonna do as a human being that's like, ugh, you're gonna move. And the problem that I have is sometimes if you're wearing rustly clothes, like, it doesn't. So to not make sound with your body, but move your body enough that you could get the sound that would be authentic for whatever happened. I think that's a big challenge.
Have you ever had the
Or
perfect
hit the
thing
mic.
and then like you had like a joint crack or something and you did it like you had like a pop or a crack or something, you're like, I gotta do that again.
Well, or things that are really physical. My dad lives in Montana, and he cut me a magic wand, like a Harry Potter wand, that he made out of a branch or something he found on his property, and gave it to me. And so I took it with me to one of my recording sessions. And then, because you think, like, if you're grabbing a hold of a pole, or if you're moving something, like, how does that feel? And I had, so the whole time I had this magic wand with me. They're probably thinking, that woman is cuckoo. Like, she brought a wand with her. But it was really fun, like, just to imagine, how can I make that sound real?
Or if you're doing blinds while running, like I'll run in place, to get the sound.
With
Because
your
you
little
sound,
feet going really silent.
yeah, like trying to be really
little tiny.
quiet, but you're like moving your body in
Yeah.
the way because it makes you sound different.
Yeah.
Okay. How you guys doing? Believe it or not, even Bowser is as two-dimensional as he can seem at times. I do get a lot of, gentle corrections because they just let me run with it, but I don't know specifically what they're looking for because we don't know exactly what's going on in the game, especially for me. They just go, give me a whole handful of this kind of sound. I'm just trying to come up with something off the top of my head, but a lot of times I'll rank off about 8 of those, and they'll go, okay, I got like 3 of that. I'm gonna keep 3 of those. So give me some more, but not as angry. Or angrier. I get a lot of that. Not so angry. Oh, I'm sorry. But I get corrected. But mostly for Bowser, it's all about time. There'll be do a short jump, like even if it's a cart jump, you're just like a brr, brr. And then they'll follow that up with, okay, do the same thing, but about 3/4 of a second. And so your brain's having to, compute this, try to get them about the length that they want. But that's how it works with us, or at least with me, which is important.
Let me ask a follow-up to that, and then we'll see if there's another question in the audience. But it sounds like based on these answers, and I think when you brought this up earlier, is that there's really a certain level of improv that goes into this as well. How much, it sounds like you kind of improv a lot sometimes, and then maybe there's refinement from the direction there, a partnership there. How much would you say you actually end up improving of the character?
I mean, I feel like there tends to be the thing you first think, I don't know how it is for the two of you, but there's that first thing when you read the script, you look at the thing they want, and you try to do that, but then if you have another idea, and I've always been like, what if I did this? They always have let me try it. Like if I had another idea, they were very open to me bringing something. Sometimes it's super straightforward. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. But there's other times where they will say, they'll say something and then you'll go, but what if it was like this? And they've always been like, do it, try it, let's hear what it is.
Yeah, and I think after working with these characters for so long, we sort of know what they would say. And so if they've written it, I always do what they've written first and then just do a few others and see what happens. And sometimes they'll even take the improv and then they'll go, I love that. That just brought another idea to this group of people. And they go, try, what would Peach say about this? And then they just start riffing off it. And And then, I mean, I feel sorry for the guys who have to listen to how many takes that we do.
Yeah.
Because there's hundreds and hundreds, and they have to go through those and go, well, which one sounds the most like falling into lava and dying, you know, and then pick it out. And they have to listen to so many of them. So I admire the directors and the producers and who put it all together, because it's a lot.
That's really cool how collaborative that process really sounds though when you kind of do that, especially because now, and if I understand correctly, this is very rare in voice acting that you would work together as a group of voice actors,
Right.
maybe on a certain project or what have you, probably not these projects. So you're really working with directors and so forth.
Yeah.
How does like a sample day kind of go in the recording session? Like a day of recording lines for Toad or whoever. How might that day look like?
So we would just come in at a certain time. I know if we're doing something where Japan is going to be weighing in, we'll record in the afternoon because of the time difference. And so they'll be there in the morning. It's morning for them, but it's afternoon for us. And they'll have a Japan on Skype. And then we'll come in and drink a lot of water ahead of time and warm up the car. And they'll have the script ready to go. And they'll start sometimes they'll have a video screen and they'll show, and it's all top secret. So the cool part is getting to see some of these games before anyone else gets to see them. And to go, oh my goodness, this is going to be amazing. But then we can't talk about it. So that's the hardest, you know, to wait that long. But to look at the screen and they'll describe, hey, this is what we're doing. We'll have a script with the lines, and then just working through them. And I'll usually do a 4-hour recording session. I love that you get 2. That probably makes sense.
Mine are 4 too.
I told them I can do it. You know, I'll be like, I can tear it all up in one day if you want me to, and they're like, no, we'd rather not.
You don't want to hurt you.
So,
Yeah, and we always do Peach first, or the babies, or, you know, the higher voice characters first, because it gets lower and lower. And if we do Toad, then no Peach after that for a while, for a few days. So,
they used to record me 4 hours at a time.
yeah.
When did it
I think,
change?
and then I got old. You know, I started acting when I was 40, and I just turned 60. So,
Wow.
wow. Take her.
All right, let me check back with the audience. Does anyone else have a question for our panel today? Oh, I see one way in the front, Bobby, right here.
Yep. I'm coming.
Might be a Toad fan.
Maybe.
I'm a Bowser fan.
Oh,
Excuse me, did you like voice act in like one of the Mario Galaxy because in Mario Galaxy you could basically fight Bowser and Bowser Jr.
Yeah, I was in Galaxy, but I'm not Bowser Jr. There's a lady in Seattle, I can never remember her name. I always feel so bad about that. But she's Bowser Jr., but there was a lot of fighting in Galaxy, so I was happy about that one. And I need to actually play that again. I haven't played it in a long time, like 10, 15, a lot of years. I don't even know.
Good question.
and so to be clear, you are Bowser, but you do not voice any of Bowser's children.
Nope.
Or, yeah, that's right.
Well, you know, he's only got one.
Where did the others come from?
Koopalings are basically adopted.
Ah, adopted
Bowser
family.
Jr.'s his only offspring.
Okay, I learned something today.
I learned it on the internet.
Now Bowser doesn't believe everything he reads on the internet, does he?
No, especially not about the actor.
Perfect. I thought I saw another
There's,
question.
yeah, I think right over here.
Yeah, come on over.
So, how old is Princess Peach?
We aged, didn't
I think she's just as old as she always is. I don't know. That goes for better minds than
Maybe
mine.
she's like 30 or 20.
You think she's 20?
Maybe
Whatever
she's like
we? Pretty young.
38 or like 28. Because that's what she's called, Princess Peach.
I think the beautiful thing
Princess
about
Peach is young.
I think the beautiful thing about Nintendo games is that there's so much open to interpretation and what fans want it to be, and leading to the things you read on the internet, by the way. I think Princess Peach is as old as you want her to be, right?
Yeah. She is. And you know, that's one of the things is I think what we love about these games is that they're accessible for everyone. Like everyone gets to be Bowser if you want to. Everyone can be Peach. right, Tammy? If you want to, and it's
Rated
like,
E
you know,
for
like they're,
everyone.
and we meet fans all the time who you're like, wow, you are like that character. Like you're just embodying that character, and it's beautiful. And so it's the collaboration of these games that you make possible, and that's what we love. And so yeah, it is. It's your call. If you think Peach is 38, then rock that. I think yes. I agree. Good question. Thank you.
Before we get to the next audience question, sorry, let me jump in with a question about kind of those fan interpretations and fan projects, because Sam, I have to admit, when I heard I'd be talking with the voice of Toad, I have to ask about this fan project.
Oh gosh.
Have you ever seen the Toad that's singing the songs online? What's your reaction to that? Are you like, that's kind of funny, or are you like, I wish they wouldn't?
Say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You know. Some people love them, yeah. I mean, gosh, it's amazing. I couldn't do it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. All right.
No shade to lose for you.
I have not seen that on the YouTubes.
I haven't seen it either. I really need to see it.
There's somebody out there that sings songs as Toad, and it's
That sounds
brutal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I-
It is.
It is.
All right, let's get to the next question in the audience.
Hi, I'm Keenan Stark from St. Louis. I'm with these guys, ours in that network.
Yay.
I want to give a shout out first off to Laura. She was playing my Game Boy phone early, so thank you so much for having
You
me.
guys have to see this guy's game. He's got a phone holder that is a Game Boy loaded with games, and you can like play. I'd never seen that. It's like the little screen I was playing like Super Mario World on there.
How far did you get it?
Not well. I mean, I've lost my touch. I'll tell you, I was much better when I first started playing that years ago. But yeah, I was not good. I died pretty quick.
So cool.
It's rad.
And it works. Yeah, so I have a question for all you guys. So, as far as being a voice actor and you playing set characters for years, now there's a day where you have to play a new character or you have to voice someone else or as extra. Is it difficult or is it simple to kind of range your voice with high, low? Like, do you have to really like get your voice prepared differently than you would normally?
I mean, yeah, I love playing new characters. I love what I love about voiceover is the variety of characters that you get to play because you can look a certain way, but you can potentially sound very different than yourself. You know, like I'd like to do demon voices because I can do them like that. But like no one's usually going to cast me that way, like just based on the way I look physically. So there is this ability to like really transform as a voice actor into creatures, into different things. Running a variety of ages, running a variety of voice types, and yes, you do really need to warm your voice up. Like I can't imagine, Kenny, that you just roll out of bed and bow.
I know, but it's true. I'm a mutant. A mutant, I tell you.
He takes longer to do his hair than he does to warm up his voice.
That's actually true.
Fact.
That's true.
Yeah.
When I'm at shows like this, I get up in the morning and I actually say testing just to see if it still works. And that's about it. I'm all like, okay, then I'll be able to go.
And for us too, it's like it's not only warming up the voice and experimenting with different voices, you know, which if I'm going to where I know I'm going to have to come up with a different voice, I'll mess around in the car and just see what comes out and just see if I can almost reach a few things. And then it's also, I think, selling it, like meaning it. Like if you sincerely say something and you mean it with your whole heart, then it's a success. You usually win the audition if you fully know that you mean it. And so what we do a lot of times is read, like we read things out loud and just practice reading it as if you mean it. And that's also important because your character not only makes a sound, but also has to mean something with the sound. And that's just a whole different process.
Yeah, being that I do a lot of anime work now, finally, which was a goal of mine, I go into the studio, I know the name of the show usually that I'm doing, and I am Miyagi in One Piece, so I know when I'm doing One Piece that I'm probably doing Miyagi. But other shows I've never even heard of, and they bring me in, and I don't know what I'm going to be doing. You know, it is, as I describe it, the Forrest Gump box of chocolates of voice acting, because you never know what you're going to get. So, but that's the surprise of it and the challenge of it. You're doing ADR and you walk in cold.
And can you explain what ADR is?
It's automatic dialogue replacement. That's, you know, the anime is in Japanese, so we're replacing it with English. And the engineers put beeps in to lead us into where we're supposed to talk. And then hopefully, when you watched it in Japanese, you got it in your brain how long the space is, and then try to make the script that they wrote in English fit into that space to where the beginning flap and the end flaps work, and hopefully the internals aren't too skewy,
Wow.
you know?
And if you're doing incidentals, like what they call incidental characters, where so you're playing like 4 or 5 different people in an episode who just say a little bit, and like trying
Yeah.
to figure out ways to differentiate them.
I know.
And sometimes they're right next to each other, so
I know.
you're like, oh, and you can't put on like a southern accent sometimes for certain things, or you know, if you can't
Yeah.
change that, like going, oh, okay, how do I make this person sound younger or older or gruffer or different, because they're not going to be that far apart when people are watching it. You don't want to sound like the same person twice.
Yeah, I had a flashback when you said that because a guy got, oh, you know what, while you're here, let me have you do this other guy. He's just walking by with his kid, he's got one line. And I could not get out of my own head, and I sounded exactly like the character that I just recorded for the same episode. And he goes, no, never mind, I'll get somebody else.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, it pays the same anyway. So.
I dub a lot of movies, like I do a lot of dubbing in different languages, and like if you're doing a character, like it's great if you're doing like telenovelas, like you know those soap operas, because if you establish as an actor in one of those, then when they do new ones, they usually call you in for those as well, because you kind of become the voice of that Portuguese actor, or you know wherever they're from. But if you're doing a bunch of small stuff in Walla, what they call Walla, like crowd scenes and stuff in an episode, that's when you're suddenly like trying to like mix it up all the time. It's little bits here and there, but it's an interesting challenge to see if you can do it. Like you said, I want to see if I can do as many voices as I can. How many voices can I do in this one show and have people not realize it's all you?
Yeah, it's crazy. I make a joke about that. I don't make a joke about it as much as I used to, but I used to, when I first got into Funimation, I would tell panel crowds, I'd be like, yeah, you know, I'm doing anime now. And they go, ooh. I go, you've probably heard of my best known voice. It's additional voices. I'm well known for additional voices. But I've had a few with names, so just waiting.
But additional voices is extremely important, because if you think about some of the games that you've played, like I play a lot of MMOs, and a lot of that is additional voices, and you build that environment and the world. It's world building, really. So it's very important stuff.
You
So
are important, Kenny.
that's right.
Oh, wow.
I'm trying to give a shout out for additional voices. Help me give me this shout out.
Somebody's got to do it.
That's right. Any other questions from our audience? Looks like one down here. I'm coming.
Hi. If you could give one bit of key advice to aspiring voice actors, what could it be?
Great question.
Get into acting, because I think a lot of people think that it's just funny voices. Like, you know, they'll come up and they'll say, oh, I can do a lot of voices. But the job is acting. So find out if you like that, because that's what you're going to be asked to do. And we've talked about this a lot on panels. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, I got on a TV show, community theater, taking an acting class. If you can, because everything is emotion in these things. You know, like you are playing big disappointment or big excitement. And if you always sound like just kind of flat and the same, but you're doing a particular voice, unless you're playing a robot, and even now, like AI doesn't sound robotic for the most part. Like if you think about a lot of robots sound more human, like more and more, they're like, this is AI, but we don't want it to sound totally robotic. The other piece of advice I'd give you is don't worry so much about learning to do funny voices or like imitating voices that already exist. Because a lot of times they want you to sound like yourself. Like, you know, if you think about certain games, you know, a soldier or something, you would really just kind of sound like you, but in intensified situations. So sometimes I think people think, oh, I've got to come up with all these wild voices. Not necessarily. Like you may have an interesting sounding voice all on your own, or a voice that's right in the pocket of what they want, but what they want to know is, can you act? Can you enact these different scenarios? Can you be terrified? Can you be in love? Can you be vulnerable? Can you sound like you're crying? Can you do all that with your voice, even as it just exists as you normally speak? And not always about, can you sound like Bugs Bunny? Can you sound like Charles Martinet? Like those jobs are already taken. Do you?
And I think meaning it, like we were talking about earlier, a lot of times I'll look at a line and you can read the line, but it is better if you look at the line and you take it into you and then you tell the line. As if you were saying it to your best friend or you're saying it to somebody and you just mean it with your whole heart. You read it, but you're not reading it. The less you can read and the more you practice reading, not reading, I think the better you get as doing auditions, because you can look at a line and then you can deliver it. And if you do that, you win.
Reading out loud, it's good exercise. It gets your brain trained up, even if you're not working on emoting quite so much yet. But eventually, you read out loud enough, and I mean, even if you're not reading out loud, but you should if you want to do voiceover, your brain eventually starts looking a word or two ahead, sometimes even more, because you have a buffer, and you're storing some words as you're saying them, but you're already looking ahead slightly, which helps with catching punctuation, so that you know you're coming up to a stop or you're coming up to an exclamation point. You need to ramp this up a little bit, so that you don't sound like, I don't know, very dry and monotone. If you need to put emotion in it. And everything else that they said, I would have said the same thing. Theater is a great way to start learning acting, take direction. It doesn't cost you anything except transporting back and forth to rehearsals.
Taking direction is huge. Like if you know people aren't going to keep wanting to work with you if they tell you to do it differently and you sound exactly the same each time. Like they're like
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And thick skin.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because I'm to the point now where I don't care anymore if they go, "That's really," and I'd be all like, "What?" That's the way I did it, and then they're like, "Do it different." I'm like, "Fine," And with auditions, I mean, if you're going to be hurt because you didn't get a part that you really, really wanted, it might not be for you, because you're going to get a lot of denials.
I think that goes for real life too. A lot of
Sure.
times we try things and it's because, hey, I really want to have this, but to do it where you are still an intact and whole human being, whether you got it or you got approval or not, you're still beautiful and you're still important and strong and it's going to work out for you. And if you walk in that, then everything works out. It eventually works out. You get the roles in life or in a, if you're getting cast, that you're supposed to. And that's what we want. We want something that's supposed to be for you. So.
And it's ultimately all archery, right? Sometimes you're nearer and closer to the mark. You're like sending arrows at things, and you just learn how to get closer each time. And then there's times when it's completely out of your hands. Like, or they change it. How many times have you guys auditioned for something, you followed the specs they sent, and then you hear it, and you're like, that is the opposite of what you asked for. Like the final piece, you're like, they said they wanted it really calm and quiet, and then it's this spazzed out thing when you hear it on the radio, and you went, how did that even happen? And it's like, who knows, like what that process was.
Yeah.
You followed it, they went in a different direction. Who knows when that process was made? Maybe the person they hired did it calm and they got in the session and they changed it, or maybe that person didn't read the specs and sent in an audition that was really spazzed out and they went, wow, that's interesting, even though they said they wanted something else.
Yeah, written specs, that's so much harder than being directed in person.
Yeah.
Because you have to try to self-direct, and a lot of times you're wrong. So, it's fine though. Nobody knows who
He
that
gets a lot
was.
of counseling.
As an observer, though, I'm glad you brought up the direction, because that's a very common theme I'm hearing amongst all of you, is that part of this collaborative process is very much direction. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are like, I want to be a voice actor because I can do these great voices, which is a great first start, but you have to, what's going to happen when somebody tells you, but I need you to do that voice differently, right? And acting classes can help you get there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, and like really being able to understand what something's asking. I was in a session with someone once, it was just for a commercial, and I was like, do they really not understand what the director's asking? Because I could tell what the director wanted, but we were just going and going, and I'm like, I think he's pretending not to understand because he wants to go into the second hour so we'll get paid more.
What?
All I could figure, because I was like, either, like, how have you been booking work with you? it's so clear what they want you to do, and then he'd be like, great, and he would do it again. It would sound exactly the same every single time. I'm like, you either are doing this on purpose, or you probably won't be continuing.
Blacklist.
Yeah, it was
That's
weird.
it. You're rubber stamped. You're out of here.
Some of the best directors are super, like, the art of directing is a whole other thing. And you never know, like, if you're thinking of getting involved in this industry, that's another job, is directing. And I've had really good directors, if I'm delivering a line and I'm not quite hitting it or whatever, and they'll say something like, why don't you do it and, like, pretend like you're drawing a bow back while you do it. So make the sound, but be like, oh, you know,
Yeah.
and so like they'll give you some kind of physicality that they thought of that helps you achieve a sound. That's brilliant, you know, like that's so cool. Super smart brains making it happen.
Anime's easier. Well, I have the animation to work from.
Right.
So it's not just reading a line on a page and then having somebody correct you. I get to see the action and hear the sound effects and the music and what the Japanese actor did. So, you know, it's like, cool. That helps a lot. But then, you know, I don't try to impersonate the sound of the Japanese version. I tend to go out on my own, and if it flies, it flies. You know, a lot of times though, you know, it's like, no, be calmer. Calmer, okay.
Before we get to the next audience question, I was going to ask, because you all have been bringing up something that was on my list to ask, but it really sounds like it varies from project to project. I was going to ask, like, what is a typical, do you get like a list of prompts? Like, here's the things you're going to be doing today? Because, you know, especially a character like Bowser, you mentioned, doesn't really speak English. So it's not like you're getting a script in the sense we usually think of a script, like
No,
words.
there is.
So is it prompts, or is it just, you know?
Yeah, the Bowser scripts, they used to be on paper, but now they're on a tablet and I just scroll through them. But it's pages of stuff, but it's all situations and things, it's directions that pertain more to what's going on instead of what it sounds like. So then I have to make him sound like he's doing whatever it is that he's doing. So, and that's where the directors come in. So, because they know, they've already seen the storyboards and stuff. We haven't seen any of it. So,
Yeah, they mostly know, but then the interesting thing with us, and I know you've spoken of this before too, is we'll do a project and we think we're hitting it and the directors think they're hitting it as best as they can. But overnight, then if we're recording for 4 days, that first day, they're taking all the things we did on this whole 4 hours and they're gonna run it by people who make decisions. And if they go, yes, then we're good. And if they go, that wasn't quite right, then we're recording it all again. Mostly we've been really fortunate because they go, yeah, that was great, that's perfect, we love it. And then we have a couple tweaks. Hey, this one didn't quite, that wasn't what we were imagining. But because it is so collaborative, there's a couple minds that aren't in that session that also have to weigh in. And they weigh in after you've done it that night, get it back, okay, and then
and
forward.
that does include pressure of having Nintendo Japan approve everything. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're waiting for overnight emails. You know, it's like, what? When I did Meowser, I go in for a follow-up session and I was horrified because I was like, oh no, what if I have to redo that whole thing?
So you spent your
And
voice so much to do
I wouldn't have known, I don't know. I worked so hard on it that I don't know what I would have done to change it. So when they said, oh yeah, we got the email, everything's fine, we can move on. I was all like,
crying.
woo! I was like, all right. All right. Out my face.
All right, I know we have another question in the audience. Let's try to get one or two more questions.
Hi, I was just wondering, it's kind of a two-part question, but when you were first kind of getting started, did you go immediately to a professional demo? And then also, did you have an agent right off the bat? Or did you kind of try to do things on your own?
It's, it's interesting because like when I was first getting started in voiceover, I just had like just this freakishly easy start that I would like, I can't offer that up as a way to do things because it doesn't work that way anymore. Like when I signed with just a solo voice agent, like my first voice jobs were through like an agent that repped me for TV commercials, film, and then sometimes sent voiceover auditions. Then I got like just strictly a voiceover agent, and I got it by having a meeting with them. They didn't even have me audition. We just sat and chatted, and they liked me and they signed me. But this was in Portland, Oregon. They were trying to build a roster, so it was just kind of easy to do. Now, to even get a meeting with an agent, you typically have to have a demo reel of some kind. And there's a lot of ways to do that. You know, there's places where you can take a class and then you come out with a reel at the end of it, like they help you put that together. And that's actually, some places that do that very well, and a lot of them are even doing it remotely. So there's places like in LA that do that, where you can, you know, go take the sessions via Zoom and then like record in a studio remotely through Source Connect or whatever. So it is pretty hard to get an agent, I think, anymore if you don't have a demo reel, if they can't have an idea of what you do. And it's what technology changed the game. When suddenly everybody could start recording from home and people could like go on Twitter and suddenly book voiceover jobs like that, it's very different than when things are just going through agents. It is different now, but I would say, yeah, you better, to get an agent, to get the kinds of auditions that you probably want, a Nintendo type audition, Nickelodeon, you know, like bigger projects, you need to get that through an agent. And then to get that agent, usually you have to have a demo. And if the demo isn't good, you're probably not going, like, you know, if it sounds like, I did this at home, and there's like background noise, and there's no music or sound effects on it, you're probably not gonna get very far.
Yeah, not suggested. Don't try to produce your own demo. It's really not a good idea. It's better to go out and spend a little bit of money and have somebody do it. But vet them. You know, there's a lot of
Listen to
people
their
out there that
examples.
just want to take your money. So,
Like, listen, if you hear people who have good demos, or they, you know people who do have agents, ask them where they got theirs done. Go listen to them, see if you like their work, or if people did it through a class, find out what class that was, you know, and make sure that those are demos that are actually getting people jobs.
yeah, and sometimes, yeah, if you're in a built-up enough area too, there's bound to be several recording studios in your area, and a lot of times they have somebody who does, you know, demo production as either part of the studio's work, or they do it as a side gig, you know. But they're producers and they know what they're doing, hopefully. And they have you in and you record a bunch of stuff and they see what fits, and they write you some copy or pull copy, and they record you and put it together with music and all that jazz, and now you got a demo.
And that's one of the hardest things, is finding the copy, right? Like, you either are trying to find a way to come up with it yourself, or like if you go to these classes, they'll usually provide a lot of that. But I also think there's places who will record people for demos who aren't really ready to do that, but they'll take your money and
That's
they'll do
true.
that.
Yeah.
And really make sure that if you're going out for, you know, an animation reel or something, you make sure you've taken some acting classes, because if someone's like, all right, well, I'll just record you doing a bunch of voices and slapping that together, but people can't tell that you can act from that. You've spent money you didn't necessarily need to spend. Like, sometimes you want to like wait till you're more ready. So sometimes working with a coach or taking a class, getting some feedback and saying, you know, do you think I'm kind of ready to do this, is a good first step before you just like go, I'm just gonna go record a demo, and you're nowhere near being ready to record a demo because you just don't understand it enough yet.
Yeah, and I think making contacts, and by taking classes, you're meeting people and they're getting to know you. And I think having contacts really helps you maybe sometimes get in the door where you might not be able to get in the door otherwise. I know Nintendo in Seattle, there's a training school there called DigiPen, and they train a lot of people. And so occasionally there'll be a teacher there who's like, hey, this person's cool, you know, and referring them to Nintendo or whatever. For voice acting, I have a niece who just got into the business. It's very different. Like Laura, I started, and like Kenny, I started a while ago, and it just organically happened. I was in Seattle, and I was doing a lot of radio, and I was doing some syndicated radio stuff, and I finished a session, and the guy goes, do you have an agent? And I was like, no. And that's how I got an agent. And she was the one who sent me on it, but it was kind of magical. Like, I didn't even try. Like, how did that happen? So I think now you have to be more purposeful. But networking, like, the more people you know who know you and know what you can do. And then your demo, you want to show off all the range of you. You want to show can you do a little boy voice? Can you do a grandma voice? Can you do you as a tired middle-aged woman? Can you do you as a young 20-something-year-old
And
person?
can you maintain it? Don't put any voice on your demo that you couldn't do for 4 hours. Like, you know, you're like, I can do this, but it's like, can you do that for 4 hours and still talk at the end of it? Will it sound the same at hour 1 as hour 4? That's important, like, 'cause sometimes people will put stuff on there, but like, I can do 2 seconds of this particular accent, but you couldn't if someone just handed you a ton of text to do that accent. Like, can you say, you know, be at Fostis, and you're like, oh, that's my Australian accent right there, but I can just do be at Fostis. And so as long as that's the line, you're fine. But if it's like, here's a huge paragraph of stuff, do you really understand that accent?
And you want contrast on your demo too. Like you want some things that are, you want to sound like a professional business person. You want to sound like someone who's fun. Just a different like contrast. So one of the critiques I had for my niece's demo reel was she has a beautiful voice. She's African American. She has like this beautiful sound that's really popular right now. Fantastic, but so much of her stuff sounded the same. So she'd have one thing, and I was like, if I could help you, I would ask you to do something that shows what else can you do that's different from this. You know, can you sound older? Yeah. So.
Well, we're at just a couple minutes left for our panel here. I do want to remind everybody that our voice actors here are still doing autographs and selfies for just a little bit longer, right? So if you have any follow-up questions or you want to go grab an autograph or a selfie, I encourage you to head on over towards the game room. You can't miss them, they're right out front, so get those. I also I wanted to give you guys an opportunity for any social medias or things you want to talk about, anything. I know it's hard to talk about future projects, but anything you want to plug, whether it be personally or professionally, before we close out here.
When I'm announcing projects, I put them on my Instagram when I'm able to, like when I'm like, okay, the NDA is lifted and it's just my name, Laura Faye Smith. That's my Instagram handle. I'm every now and then on Twitter. I can't tell if Twitter's going to stick around or not, but Instagram's the best. That's where I put most of my energy.
It's X.
Oh, is that what it is now? Is X?
It's called X.
Okay.
Sounds like a Bowser plot to me.
That tells you how.
Updated the.
There's the X. Yep.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even know. That's how little time I've been on.
That's all right, I don't use the Twitters anyway.
So now it's called X.
Yeah, after we're done, we can talk about that giant light they just installed that's keeping my friends up at night. But anyway, I digress.
I'm at Samantha Kelly Peach on Instagram. I love cosplay, so mine has a lot of cosplay on there because that's my favorites. But yeah, that's mostly what I do. I don't do X.
I'm lazy social media guy, but you can find me on Instagrams, on the Instagrams, but it's just Kenny James Bowser. I have a Twitter account, but I don't do it. I don't mess with it. And Facebook, it's so full of people that I'm just all like, what's Facebook? So, you really want to find me, just go Instagram, because everything else is a mess.
Or just walk up to his table. He's not as dangerous as he looks.
I'm actually very nice.
He is.
Well, I want to say it was a real honor to do this panel with you all today. Thank you so much for coming out to Southern Fried Gaming Expo. Thank you so much. I'm Rob Roberts, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter. It's the Sears Tower, and it's Twitter, at Mr. Rob Roberts, Mr. Rob Roberts, Sunday nights at the Voice Geeks Network on Orange Launch Radio. It was a real honor. Thank you so much again. Have a great rest of your Southern Fried, everybody.
Thank you guys. I love it.